Have you ever wondered if an entire village could simply disappear from history? Not destroyed, not abandoned, just erased. No records, no official documents, no signs, no maps. As if it had never existed at all. Yet every now and then, someone claims they found it, and almost every one of them vanished soon after. In the spring of 2026, documentary researcher Daniel Carter spent his days studying forgotten places across Europe. He specialized in abandoned castles, lost railways, and ghost towns that history had left behind. Nothing unusual ever surprised him anymore, until an elderly librarian placed a dusty leather folder on the table. Inside was a faded paper map dated 1948. Near the center was a tiny handwritten name, Blackridge. Daniel searched the National Archive. Nothing. He searched historical census records. Nothing. Military maps. Nothing. Modern satellite images. Nothing. It was as though Blackridge had never existed. The librarian watched him carefully. Then she quietly asked, "Do you know why old maps are dangerous?" Daniel smiled. "They're usually wrong." The old woman slowly shook her head. "No. They remember things we're supposed to forget." She refused to explain further. Instead, she handed Daniel another document. It wasn't a map. It was a newspaper clipping. The headline simply read, "Local explorer never returns from unknown village." The article had no location, no village name, no investigation, only a final sentence. He claimed he had found a place that no map would admit existed. Daniel assumed it was folklore, until he noticed something strange. The date printed on the newspaper was impossible. The newspaper was published 3 years before the map showing Blackridge had ever been drawn. Someone had written about the village before anyone officially knew it existed. Curiosity quickly became obsession. Over the next week, Daniel searched universities, museums, military collections, and private archives. Every reference disappeared. Books containing Blackridge suddenly had missing pages. Digital scans failed to load. Entire catalog entries vanished overnight. Even stranger, the librarian who had given him the map could no longer be found. Staff insisted no woman matching her description had worked there. Security cameras showed Daniel speaking to an empty chair. He replayed the footage again and again. There was no one sitting across from him. Only Daniel, holding a map that no archive admitted owning. That night he pinned the map to his apartment wall. He photographed it. He scanned it. He measured every mark. Before going to bed, he locked the office door. The next morning, the map had changed. Blackridge was no longer in the center. It had moved nearly 30 miles west. Daniel compared it with yesterday's photographs. The photographs showed the old position. The paper showed the new one. The map had changed, but the photograph had not. Someone, or something, was moving the village, not on the paper, but in reality. Daniel whispered only one sentence before turning off the lights. "I'm going to find you." Outside his apartment window, someone standing across the street quietly folded an old paper map, looked directly toward Daniel's window, and slowly crossed out the name, Blackridge. Daniel barely slept. The image of the map stayed in his mind all night. By sunrise, he had made his decision. If Blackridge existed, someone had hidden it. If someone had hidden it, there had to be a trail. He packed cameras, batteries, paper maps, satellite equipment, and enough supplies for a week. He invited 2 people he trusted. Emma Collins, a cartographer who specialized in historical maps, and Liam Brooks, a documentary cameraman who had spent years filming abandoned places. Neither of them believed Daniel's story, at least not yet. Daniel spread the 1948 map across the table. Emma studied it for several minutes. Then her expression changed. "This paper is authentic. The ink is authentic. But these roads," she frowned, "they shouldn't exist." She pulled out 3 official maps from different decades, one from 1952, one from 1978, one from 2005. The roads leading toward Blackridge appeared on the oldest map. They became shorter on the second, and vanished completely on the newest. It was as if history had been edited. Liam laughed nervously. "So someone deleted a village." Emma didn't smile. "No. They deleted the road first." That afternoon, they began driving toward the last known location. The highway was modern, busy, ordinary. But after several hours, the GPS suddenly froze. The screen turned gray. No signal, no coordinates, only a blinking cursor. Emma checked another GPS. The same thing happened. Daniel unfolded the paper map. A narrow dirt road appeared exactly where the GPS had failed. There was no road sign, no markings, only cracked asphalt disappearing into thick forest. Liam pointed his camera toward the entrance. The battery instantly dropped from 98% to 12. No way. He replaced it with a fully charged spare. Within seconds, 8%, then 6, then dead. The forest was completely silent. No birds, no insects, not even wind. Only the distant sound of something metallic, clang, 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 like an old church bell carried through the trees. They drove forward anyway. After 20 minutes, they reached a small farmhouse. An elderly man stood outside repairing a wooden fence. Daniel asked one question. Have you heard of Blackridge? The hammer slipped from the old man's hand. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he quietly answered, My father told me never to say that name. Daniel asked why. The old man looked toward the forest. Because every person who searched for it, he paused, came back different. Emma asked, different how? They remembered people who never existed. They forgot people they loved. And some, he swallowed, forgot themselves. Daniel asked if anyone had actually reached the village. The farmer nodded once. My brother. What happened? He came home after 6 days. He wouldn't tell us where he'd been. He spent every evening drawing maps, thousands of them. But every map showed a different village. Liam asked, Where is he now? The farmer slowly pointed toward a small cemetery behind the house. There. Daniel walked to the grave. The headstone carried only a name, Ethan Walker. No birth date, no death date, only one sentence carved beneath. He found what was missing. As they turned to leave, Emma suddenly stopped. She stared at the dirt road behind them. There were tire tracks. Daniel looked back. The road was smooth, perfectly untouched, as though no vehicle had ever driven across it. Liam checked his camera. Hours of footage were gone. The recording now began at the cemetery. Everything before it had vanished. Then, from somewhere deep inside the forest, a road sign slowly emerged through the fog. Old, rusted, barely standing. Only one word remained visible beneath decades of scratches. Blackridge. The arrow pointed deeper into the trees, but as the three of them looked at it, the arrow slowly turned by itself, pointing in the opposite direction. The arrow should not have moved. There was no wind. No one was standing near the sign, yet it slowly rotated until it pointed toward a narrow path hidden behind the trees. None of them spoke. Daniel simply picked up the camera. This is where we stop following maps. We follow the sign. They left the vehicle behind. The forest swallowed the sound of their footsteps almost immediately. The deeper they walked, the stranger everything became. The trees were enormous, their trunks twisted into impossible shapes. Some looked almost melted. Others carried deep carvings that had been worn smooth by time. Emma stopped beside one of them. Someone had carved dozens of dates into the bark. 1947, 1948, 1949, 1950, 1951, 1952. The years weren't in order. It looked as though different people had returned decades apart, and all marked the same tree. Liam filmed each carving, then he frowned. There's one more, near the bottom of the trunk, freshly carved. 2026. Today's year. None of them had touched the tree. Daniel looked around. Someone else had been there. Recently. They continued walking. Minutes later, the forest suddenly ended. Without warning, the trees opened into a wide valley. There it was. Blackridge. Exactly as it appeared on the faded map. A stone bridge crossed a narrow river. Rows of old houses lined quiet streets. A church stood at the center. Smoke no longer rose from its chimney. The windows reflected nothing. Everything was perfectly still. Not abandoned, not destroyed. Waiting. Liam whispered. It looks normal. Daniel wasn't convinced. No, it's too normal. They crossed the bridge. The first thing they noticed was the silence. No birds, no dogs, no insects. Not even the sound of water beneath the bridge. The river flowed without making a single sound. Emma knelt beside it. She touched the surface. Ripples spread across the water. Still, no sound. She quickly pulled her hand back. Inside the first house, breakfast was still on the table. Bread had turned to stone. A teacup remained half full. Dust covered everything, yet nothing had been disturbed. A chair was pushed back as though someone had stood up only seconds earlier. In another house, a fireplace still contained burned wood. Beside it lay a child's toy train. Daniel gently picked it up. The wheels moved freely. No rust, no decay. It looked almost new. Liam checked the date on a newspaper lying across the floor. October 14th, 1958. The headline had faded. Only one sentence remained readable. The evacuation continues today. No explanation followed. Every other word had disappeared beneath stains and age. Emma entered the village school. Tiny backpacks still hung beside wooden desks. Exercise books remained open. One page caught her attention. Every child had been asked the same question. What do you want to be when you grow up? Most answers were ordinary. Teacher, doctor, farmer, artist. But one notebook contained only a single sentence. I hope the village lets me leave. Emma slowly closed the book. Something wasn't right. The church bell suddenly rang. Once, the sound echoed across the empty streets. Then silence returned. Daniel looked toward the church tower. I thought no one lived here. Liam zoomed the camera toward the bell. No movement. The bell was completely still. It had never swung, yet they had all heard it. They entered the church. Rows of wooden benches faced the altar. Candles had long since melted. Dust covered the floor, except there was a single line of fresh footprints, one pair, leading toward the basement door, but none, leading back out. Daniel reached for the handle. It was warm, as though someone had opened it only moments before. He slowly pulled the door open. Cold air rushed upward. Darkness swallowed the staircase. Before anyone could step inside, Emma looked back through the church window. Her face turned pale. Daniel, he followed her gaze. Outside, the village was no longer empty. Every street was now filled with people, hundreds of them, standing perfectly still, watching the church. None of them had been there just a few seconds earlier. Daniel rushed to the church window. The streets were full. Hundreds of people stood in complete silence. Men, women, children, all dressed in clothes from another era. No one moved. No one blinked. No one spoke. Liam lifted his camera with shaking hands. He pressed record. The viewfinder showed empty streets. He lowered the camera. The people were still there. He looked through the viewfinder again. Nothing. Only deserted roads. It's not recording them, he whispered. Emma slowly stepped closer to the window. One little girl stood at the front of the crowd. She couldn't have been older than 8. She wore a faded blue dress and held a small stuffed rabbit. The girl's eyes locked onto Emma. Then, she slowly raised one finger, not pointing at the church, pointing directly at Emma. The church bell rang again. This time twice. When the echo faded, the streets were empty. Every figure had vanished. No footsteps, no doors closing, nothing, only silence. Daniel forced himself to open the basement door. The narrow staircase descended beneath the church. Each step was covered in dust, except for one fresh footprint, a footprint that looked exactly like Daniel's boot. He checked the sole of his shoe. The pattern matched perfectly. But I've never been down here. No one answered. The basement smelled of damp stone and old paper. Shelves lined the walls. Thousands of files filled wooden cabinets, maps, birth records, photographs. Every document was neatly organized, almost as if someone expected visitors. Emma opened a large leather ledger. The title read, Residents of Blackridge. Every family in the village was listed. Names, addresses, occupations, birth dates, everything, until the final page. Across the bottom, someone had written by hand, population 413. Below that, in fresh black ink, another line appeared, current population, 416. Daniel counted. There were only 3 of them. Daniel, Emma, Liam. Who's the 4th? No one spoke. Liam searched the room with his flashlight. The beam stopped on a wall covered with framed photographs. Every family in Blackridge had posed in front of the same church, generation after generation. The oldest photo was nearly a century old. The newest appeared to be taken sometime in the late 1950s. Daniel stepped closer, then his heart stopped. Standing in the back row, wearing modern hiking clothes, was Liam, exactly as he looked today. Same jacket, same backpack, same camera. Liam stared at the photograph. I've never been here. Emma looked at another frame. She gasped. She was there too, standing beside children she had never met, smiling naturally, as though she belonged. Daniel searched desperately through the remaining photographs. Then he found himself. Not once, dozens of times. Older photographs, newer photographs, different years, different seasons, always standing somewhere in the background, never looking at the camera, always looking at whoever was taking the picture. Liam backed away. This isn't possible. Daniel looked at the date beneath one frame. June 3rd, 1934. Nearly a century before any of them were born. Emma noticed something even stranger. The photographs weren't dusty. Someone had cleaned them recently. Then, a camera shutter clicked behind them. All three turned instantly. No one was there. Another click. This time from the opposite side of the room. Then another, and another. Invisible cameras, taking invisible photographs. Flash, flash, flash. The basement filled with blinding white light. Daniel covered his eyes. When the flashes stopped, a brand new photograph lay on the floor. Still developing. 3 people stood inside the church basement. Daniel, Emma, Liam. Behind them, a 4th figure smiled into the camera. Its face was completely scratched away, but underneath the photograph, fresh ink slowly appeared. Welcome back. No one touched the photograph. Daniel stared at the words appearing beneath it. Welcome back. The ink looked fresh, as if someone had written it only seconds ago. Liam reached for the picture. The moment his fingers touched the paper, every flashlight in the basement went out. Darkness swallowed the room. For 3 long seconds, no one breathed. Then the lights flickered back on. The photograph was gone. Only a thin layer of gray ash remained on the floor. Emma looked toward the shelves. They've moved. Daniel frowned. What? The shelves. I'm sure they were against that wall. Now they formed a narrow corridor, leading deeper underground. None of them remembered seeing it before. Daniel checked the map of the village. His face turned pale. The church was no longer where it had been. According to the map, they were standing inside the town hall. He unfolded another map. This one showed the church beside the river. A third placed it at the edge of the cemetery. Every map disagreed. Every map insisted it was correct. Emma spread them across the stone floor. There has to be one original. Daniel shook his head. I don't think there is. Liam pulled out his drone controller. No maps. Let's make our own. He hurried outside and launched the drone. The aircraft climbed smoothly above the rooftops. Its live feed appeared on the screen. Blackridge stretched beneath them. Perfect rows of houses. The church. The bridge. The square. Then the image glitched. For less than a second, the village disappeared. In its place stood a dense forest. No roads, no buildings, nothing. The signal returned. Blackridge was back. Another glitch. Forest. Village. Forest. Village. As if 2 places occupied the same ground. Then the drone flew over the center of the village. The feed froze. Liam whispered, "What is that?" A massive circular mark surrounded Blackridge. Not a wall, not a road. A perfect ring where every tree outside the village suddenly stopped growing. Beyond it, the forest was alive. Inside it, time itself seemed frozen. The drone battery dropped from 70% to 0. The screen went black. Moments later, a loud crash echoed somewhere beyond the rooftops. Daniel unfolded the paper map again. Blackridge had changed. 3 streets had vanished. 4 new ones had appeared. The bridge they had crossed no longer existed. Emma looked up. Daniel, he followed her gaze. The bridge really was gone. Only the river remained. There was no sign that a bridge had ever stood there. Liam ran to the riverbank. Our car, the road on the opposite side, had disappeared too. The forest now stretched unbroken to the horizon. It was as if they had never entered the village at all. Emma's breathing became uneven. We're trapped. Daniel refused to accept it. There has to be another way out. They searched every street, but every turn led somewhere different. The bakery became a school. The school became a hospital. The hospital became an empty field. Buildings changed locations every time they looked away. Even the church bell tower appeared on different streets. Nothing stayed where it belonged. Hours later, they reached the village square again. Or what they believed was the square. At its center stood an enormous stone map carved into the ground. Unlike every paper map, this one never changed. Across the top were words worn smooth by time. Emma brushed away centuries of dust. A sentence slowly appeared. The village does not move. Daniel frowned. Then why do the maps keep changing? Emma kept reading. The second line answered his question. You do. Before anyone could speak, they heard footsteps, slow, measured, echoing from the street behind them. Not one person, not 2, hundreds, all walking toward the square, at exactly the same pace. The footsteps grew louder. Not running, not rushing, just steady. Hundreds of shoes striking stone in perfect rhythm. Daniel looked down every street. No one. The sound surrounded them. But the village remained empty. Liam turned in a slow circle. They're close, Emma whispered. Or, they're beneath us. The footsteps stopped. Instantly. The silence that followed felt heavier than the noise. Then, a low rumble echoed through the square. The giant stone map beneath their feet began to vibrate. Dust drifted into the carved lines. One section slowly sank into the ground. A narrow staircase emerged. Stone steps disappeared into darkness. No mechanism. No hinges. It was as if the village itself had opened. Daniel looked at Emma. If this closes behind us, she nodded. I know. Without another word, the three descended. The passage was cold. The air smelled dry. Not like a cave, like an old library. After nearly 50 steps, the staircase ended before a massive iron door. Its surface carried no handle, only a circular symbol carved into the metal. It matched the strange ring the drone had seen around Blackridge. Emma placed her hand on it. Nothing happened. Daniel unfolded the 1948 map. The moment the paper touched the symbol, a loud metallic click echoed through the tunnel. The door slowly opened. Rows of shelves stretched into darkness. Thousands of metal boxes filled the room. Every shelf was labeled with a year. 1882, 1883, 1884, 1885, 1886, 1887, 1888. Daniel froze. Someone has been adding to this archive. Liam opened the nearest box. Inside were passports, driver's licenses, family photographs, wedding rings, pocket watches, personal diaries. Every item belonged to someone who had disappeared. Each box carried a single name. Emma opened another. The label read, Ethan Walker, the farmer's brother. Inside was the notebook the old man had described. Page after page contained hand-drawn maps. Every version of Blackridge looked different. On the final page, one sentence had been written over and over. The map is not lost. We are. Daniel searched another shelf. One box was marked, Daniel Carter. His hands stopped moving. No, this isn't possible. The label included today's date. He slowly lifted the lid. Inside lay his university ID, a wristwatch he had lost 10 years earlier, a childhood photograph, and a letter. The envelope had never been opened. Across the front, written in Daniel's own handwriting, were 4 words. Do not read this. Emma stared at him. You wrote that. I've never seen it. His voice barely rose above a whisper. After several seconds, he opened the envelope. Inside was a single page. The handwriting was unmistakably his. It read, If you're reading this, it means you ignored the warning again. You have found Blackridge before. You always forget. Do not continue below the archive. That is where it remembers you. Daniel's breathing became shallow. Liam stepped backward. This is a prank. It has to be. Then he noticed another shelf. It contained no boxes, only thick government files stamped with faded black ink. Classified. Emma opened the first file. Inside were official reports from multiple countries. Military investigators, scientists, psychologists, cartographers. Every report ended the same way. Recommendation: remove Blackridge from all future maps. Destroy all public records. Deny its existence. One document contained a handwritten note from the lead investigator. The village cannot be contained physically. It must be contained by forgetting it. Daniel turned another page. A photograph slipped onto the floor. It showed soldiers sealing the church basement in 1958. Standing beside them was the same faceless figure from the photograph they had found earlier. This time, its face wasn't scratched away. It had no face at all. Just smooth, pale skin. No eyes. No mouth. No nose. Only an empty human shape. At the bottom of the photograph, someone had written, Archivist, before anyone could react. A loud metallic slam echoed through the room. The iron door behind them had closed, and from somewhere deeper beneath the archive, a calm voice spoke for the first time. You weren't supposed to remember this place. The voice was calm, not loud, not threatening. It echoed through the archive as though the walls themselves were speaking. You weren't supposed to remember this place. Daniel rushed to the iron door. It wouldn't move. There was no handle anymore, only solid metal. Liam pounded against it. The sound disappeared almost instantly. No echo, as if the room refused to let noise escape. Emma looked toward the darkness beyond the shelves. Someone's down there. A single light appeared. Far below. It wasn't moving. It was waiting. Daniel picked up a flashlight. We're finding whoever's talking. The three followed a narrow corridor that descended even deeper beneath Blackridge. The archive slowly changed. The shelves disappeared. The stone walls became smooth concrete. Old electrical cables hung from the ceiling. Rusted ventilation pipes stretched into the darkness. This place wasn't ancient. It had been built. At the end of the corridor stood a massive steel door. Above it, faded letters could still be read. Project Orion. Liam frowned. This isn't a village. It never was. Daniel pushed the door open. Inside was an underground laboratory. Dust covered every machine. Glass observation rooms lined the walls. Rows of monitors sat dark and silent. A large calendar still hung beside the entrance. The date was frozen. October 14th, 1958. The same date they had seen in the abandoned newspaper. Emma walked to a wall covered in diagrams. Maps of Blackridge were pinned beside drawings of the human brain. Red lines connected roads, to memories, buildings, to emotions. One sentence had been circled dozens of times. Geography determines memory. Daniel whispered. What does that mean? Emma kept reading. The experiment believed memory isn't stored only in the brain. It's connected to places. If you erase the place. She stopped. Her voice became unsteady. You erase the memory. Liam laughed nervously. That's impossible. Daniel pointed toward another board. The scientists thought otherwise. They found shelves filled with research journals. Most were damaged. One remained perfectly preserved. Its author was Dr. Elias Mercer, lead researcher. Daniel opened the first page. Human memory is remarkably stable. Location is not. If a place can be separated from the world, everything connected to that place begins separating as well. Emma turned several pages. The final entries became increasingly desperate. The village is reacting. Residents report forgotten birthdays. Children no longer recognize their parents. Entire families disappear from photographs overnight. Subjects insist they have lived multiple versions of the same week. Then came the final journal entry. The experiment succeeded. That is the problem. Blackridge no longer exists in normal geography. It exists only where it is remembered. Silence filled the room. Daniel slowly looked around. So the village survives because someone remembers it. Before anyone answered, one of the old computer monitors suddenly turned on. Static filled the screen. Then an old black and white recording began playing. A scientist stood before the camera. His face was exhausted. Behind him, people hurried through the laboratory. Alarms echoed in the distance. He spoke directly into the lens. If you're watching this, the containment failed. The village learned. It adapts. It hides itself. It removes anyone who understands it completely. He looked over his shoulder. Fear crossed his face. Then he leaned closer. There is no curse. There is no ghost. There is only the recording distorted. Static swallowed the audio. His mouth kept moving, but no sound came out. The video returned for one final second. The scientist was gone. Standing in front of the camera was the faceless figure, the archivist. It slowly lifted one hand, not waving, pointing, directly behind the camera, as though someone else had just entered the room. The recording ended. The monitor went black. Then every monitor in the laboratory turned on at once. Each screen showed live security footage. Not from 1958, from today. Daniel, Emma, and Liam, walking through the village, walking through the church, walking through the archive. Every step they had taken had already been recorded. One final screen displayed a message in white letters. Memory synchronization. 97% complete. Below it, a countdown began. 03. The countdown began. 0259. 0258. No one knew what would happen when it reached 0. Daniel searched every computer. Most were dead. The keyboards crumbled beneath his fingers. Only one terminal still responded. Its screen asked for a password. Emma looked around the laboratory. There has to be a clue. Liam kept his eyes on the countdown. 0241. The room suddenly became colder. Not gradually. Instantly. Their breath appeared in the air. Then every monitor flickered. For a fraction of a second, the laboratory looked new. Bright lights. Scientists rushing through the halls. Machines humming. Then it vanished. Dust returned. Silence returned. As if they had looked through time itself. Emma found a locked cabinet labeled Final Protocol. Daniel forced it open. Inside was a single reel of magnetic tape, a portable recorder, and a handwritten note. Play only when you remember everything. Liam inserted the tape. The recorder crackled to life. A tired voice filled the room. This message is for whoever reaches the laboratory after us. If you're hearing this, you've already forgotten this place at least once. Daniel felt a chill run through him. The voice continued. We believed Blackridge erased memory. We were wrong. It copies memory. Emma frowned. What does that mean? The answer came immediately. It doesn't take your identity. It keeps it. It creates another version of you. Daniel slowly looked toward the dark hallway. Another version. The tape continued. Every visitor leaves, but something always stays behind. It remembers every choice, every fear, every mistake. That is why people feel they have been here before. Liam whispered, the photographs. Emma nodded. They weren't impossible. They were previous versions. The countdown reached 01:53. Daniel opened another file. Inside were brain scans from dozens of missing people. Each scan ended with the same handwritten observation. Original subject departed. Memory copy remained inside Blackridge. Daniel's hands trembled. So if we leave, Emma finished the sentence. Another version of us stays here. A loud creak echoed through the laboratory. Footsteps. Not hundreds this time. Only 3. Exactly 3. Walking in perfect rhythm. Outside the laboratory door. Step, step, step. Then silence. Liam slowly approached the doorway. He looked into the corridor. No one. Then, he saw movement in a polished steel cabinet. A reflection. 3 people stood behind him. Daniel, Emma, and Liam. He turned around. The room was empty. He looked back at the reflection. They were still there, but something was wrong. The reflected Daniel wore different clothes. Emma's hair was shorter. Liam's camera was an older model. They weren't reflections. They were different versions. Watching. Waiting. The reflected Daniel slowly smiled. The real Daniel did not. The reflection raised one hand, then pressed its palm against the inside of the metal surface. From the other side, as if trapped behind the reflection, hairline cracks spread across the polished steel. One, then another, then dozens. The reflected Liam mouthed 4 silent words. Don't let them switch. The mirror shattered outward. Glass exploded across the laboratory. When the dust settled, the reflections were gone. But 3 wet footprints led away from the broken cabinet, toward the exit. The countdown reached 0047. Then every speaker in the laboratory came alive. The calm voice returned. The same voice they had heard beneath the archive. Except this time, it spoke their names. Daniel, Emma, Liam, a brief pause, then one final sentence. Only one version of each of you is allowed to leave. The laboratory fell silent. Only the countdown remained. 0046. 0045. No one moved. No one spoke. Daniel stared at the broken cabinet. 3 sets of wet footprints disappeared into the hallway. But there had been only 3 people in the room. So if those are our copies, Liam whispered, where are they going? The answer came almost immediately. Toward the village. Emma grabbed Daniel's arm. We don't have time. We need to leave. Daniel looked at the countdown. If we leave without understanding this, someone else will find Blackridge. They'll go through the same thing. Emma shook her head. We're already forgetting. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? She pointed toward a family photograph lying on the floor. It had fallen from one of the files. A smiling couple stood beside a little girl. On the back was written, The Carter Family. Daniel looked carefully. I don't know these people. Emma stared at him. Daniel, that's your family? He laughed nervously. No, my parents. His voice stopped. He couldn't remember their faces. He tried harder. Nothing. Only empty spaces where memories should have been. Liam suddenly reached for his wallet. Inside was a photograph of his wife. He looked at it for several seconds, then quietly asked, Who is she? Emma felt panic rising. She opened her phone. Every contact name had changed. Instead of names, only numbers remained. No faces, no identities, only blank profiles. The countdown reached 0029. The laboratory lights dimmed, then brightened again. A loud mechanical sound echoed through the corridors. Doors were opening. Daniel ran toward the exit. The hallway beyond had changed. Instead of one corridor, there were now three. Each identical, each leading upward. Above every passage hung a rusted sign. The first read, "Leave." The second read, "Remember." The third read, "Return." Liam looked at Daniel. Which one? Daniel unfolded the old paper map. Every line had disappeared. Only one sentence remained. The choice was always yours. Emma suddenly noticed fresh handwriting appearing beneath it. Only the one who forgets can escape. She froze. If that's true, whoever remembers everything stays here. Silence. The three looked at one another. Daniel finally spoke. "No. We leave together." A soft laugh echoed through every corridor. The calm voice returned. "You said that before." Daniel's heart stopped. "What? You have entered Blackridge 12 times. You have made the same promise. 12 times?" Emma slowly backed away. "That's impossible." The voice continued. "Would you like to see?" The wall beside them suddenly became transparent. Behind the glass stood 12 versions of Daniel, each wearing different clothes, different ages, different expressions. Some were terrified, some were exhausted. One was elderly, another was badly injured. All of them looked directly at him. One by one, they slowly shook their heads, as if begging him not to repeat the same mistake. Then all 12 silently pointed toward the corridor marked, "Leave Jupt." The countdown reached 0010. Liam grabbed Daniel. "We don't have another chance." Daniel looked one last time at the laboratory, at the files, at the experiments, at every unanswered question. Then he folded the original map, placed it back inside the archive, and whispered, "No one else needs to find this." The three sprinted into the corridor marked "Leave." Behind them, the laboratory doors slammed shut. The countdown reached 00, 03, 02, 01. A blinding white light consumed everything. Then, complete darkness. When Daniel opened his eyes, he was lying beside an empty country road. Morning sunlight warmed his face. Emma lay nearby. Liam was unconscious beside the abandoned car. The forest stood silent. There was no village, no bridge, no church, only trees. Daniel smiled with relief. Until Emma quietly asked, "Daniel, who are you?" Daniel stared at Emma. She wasn't joking. There was no fear in her voice, only confusion. The kind of confusion reserved for complete strangers. She looked at him, the way someone might look at a passerby on a train. "Who are you?" Daniel opened his mouth. "My name is..." Nothing came out. He knew he had a name. He simply couldn't find it. Liam slowly sat up beside the car. He looked around the empty road, then at Daniel, then at Emma. "I think..." He paused. "I think we were traveling together." None of them could remember why. The car keys were still in the ignition. The fuel tank was full. Their cameras were inside. Every battery was charged. As if the previous week had never happened. Daniel turned on the camera. Hours of footage should have filled the memory cards. Instead, there was only one video. Length 000000000027. He pressed play. The recording showed the three of them standing in front of the camera. They looked exhausted, covered in dust. Behind them stood the Church of Blackridge. Daniel on the screen spoke directly to the lens. "If you're watching this, we failed." Emma stepped into frame. "Do not search for the village." Liam looked over his shoulder. His voice shook. "It doesn't want people. It wants memories." Daniel held up an old paper map, then slowly tore it into 4 pieces. The camera suddenly glitched. Static filled the screen. For one final second, the faceless archivist appeared behind them. Standing perfectly still, the video ended. No other files remained. Daniel searched the back seat. Only one object had not been disturbed. The leather folder from the library. Inside, the 1948 map should have been. Instead, there was a blank sheet of yellowed paper. Emma turned it over. On the back, a single sentence had been written in faded ink. "If you cannot remember Blackridge, it has already remembered you." None of them understood the warning. They drove away. Within an hour, they reached the nearest town. Daniel walked into a small cafe. The television above the counter was showing the morning news. The presenter smiled politely. "And finally, officials have confirmed the discovery of an abandoned settlement deep inside the northern forest." Daniel froze. A satellite image filled the screen. His coffee slipped from his hand. It was Blackridge, perfectly visible from above. The reporter continued. "Authorities say the location has never appeared on any official map before today. Emma looked at Daniel. For a brief second, a distant memory flashed across her face. The church bell, the underground archive, the stone map. Then it vanished. Outside the cafe, an elderly tourist unfolded a brand new road atlas. He traced a finger across the page, then stopped. There, printed clearly in fresh black ink, was a village that had never existed yesterday. Blackridge. He smiled. I've never noticed this place before. He folded the map, started his car, and drove toward the forest. Far beyond the trees, hidden beneath the morning fog, the church bell rang once. Somewhere inside the silent village, the archivist stood in the empty square, watching the road, waiting for the next visitor. Because villages can be abandoned, roads can disappear, maps can be rewritten, but some places never truly let you leave.